Welcome to Bundy Group Insights, where industry expertise meets experience. This podcast is your ultimate guide to the intricate world of mergers and acquisitions, capital raises, and economic trends. Let's get started.
Hi, this is Clint Bundy, Managing Director at Bundy Group. Thank you again for joining another episode of BG Insights. I'm excited to do this episode today for a variety of reasons. One is I get to introduce a new team member, which that's always a fun thing for us to do in our seat to demonstrate our growth in the company. And this may be a new team member in terms of being on our website and new business cards, but he's actually an individual we've had a relationship with for a long time. So he's new, but in some ways he's not. Second, this gives me an opportunity to discuss not only his background today, but also this new team member to talk about how his industry takeaways and career trajectory provide valuable insights to the listeners of BG Insights, as well as ultimately to our clients. Just to give you a little bit of background, Drew Thomas was a friend, colleague, and a partner of Bundy Group's for some time before we officially brought him on. Through the course of my relationship with Drew, I realized he had not only an interesting career, but a profile that fit really well with our team. And that included, he was a healthcare expert. We love industry specialization with Bundy Group. Two, he had an M&A background, but it was from a little bit different of a perspective than the traditional investment banking background. Three, he's a highly professional individual who's very client focused. And four, he's just an all-around good guy. So with all that being said, and with me doing enough rambling here, Drew, welcome to BG Insights and to the team.
Thanks, Clint. I appreciate that. And I appreciate that intro. Clint, it's interesting when you talk about that, what, kind of going back into my background and how I got my start in this. My entrepreneurial spirit got started at an early age. My father started a restaurant equipment and supplies company focused on hospitals, casinos, general restaurants, larger chains, and startups. And I saw him progressing through the business, growing it, getting a real solid understanding of how he's building it, what he's doing, really understanding EBITDA and growth strategies. And, while I was very young in those early years, I was able to sit in his office and see the interactions that he did with his customers, with his associates, with his dealers. And I think that really helped form the business acumen that I've developed over the years. And so kind of getting into that a little bit, he started it in 1973. We ran it. About 2 years after I graduated high school, I got heavily involved in it. Actually, in college, started a satellite office in Tuscaloosa, and was selling to the local bars and restaurants there. And it was very interesting because that was the first time I was actually out on my own, really doing that. And now a little quick backstory: I grew up sweeping the warehouse, so I was doing all the grunt work. I knew that business from top to bottom. And so when I went off on my own, it was easy for me to take that on and get started. As we progressed, I saw some gaps in the business, specifically around small wares. So small wares being anything that, front of the house, glasses, flatware, small appliances, utensils, anything like that. And that was one of the gaps that we had in the business. And so my focus was building that and really developing that and being able to add different verticals within that business to give us a better presence in the market. So did that for several years, and then kind of fast forward a little bit. In 2007, we got what we refer to as an unsolicited offer through the mail. And what that is, it was a letter from a company that said, "Hey, we're interested in your business. We're looking to get into that space, and we'd like to talk about buying it." And we were kind of, I wouldn't say we were ignorant or naive or anything like that. We had been around for a while and understood the industry, but we got them all the time. Every day we'd get something, a phone call, a letter, and this was back when AOL time, so we weren't getting emails all the time. But for this one instance, we actually called them up and had a conversation with them. They ended up coming down. We spoke with them, and we kind of aligned. We didn't think about hiring an investment banker. We didn't think about going through the proper steps. that the traditional process would suggest. And they came in, a lot of back and forth, due diligence process. They made an offer, and we accepted. And at surface value, it was great. The structure of the payout was good. There was no equity involved. And actually, just to give you a little bit deeper information, we had a payout at close, and then the final payout was about 6 months later. And so my dad was happy with that. And keep in mind, this was 2007, just before the 2008 crash. So we were very fortunate in that regard. But let's kind of get through. Once the acquisition was completed, it sort of turned our world upside down a little bit. They didn't really have any experience in the restaurant equipment industry, and we did. So it was kind of butting heads. They wanted to make a lot of changes. They were, saying, "Hey, we need to go after this industry and this type of clientele." And what they didn't understand was that was not really where our focus was. And there was a little bit of clashing there, but we powered through. Continue to be successful, but outside of our own powers, the company that bought us ended up going bankrupt. And so that was about a year and a half after the close. So fortunately, we had gotten all our money. It was what it was. And that really gave me a strong understanding of taking the time to go through this process and make sure that you're finding the right partner in an acquisition, because this is something that we had built since 1973. This was our family business. My brothers worked there. I worked there. My mom worked there for a short amount of time. It's a different story, but it's one of those that, looking back, we were fortunate with regard to time, because we were able to make a decision rather quickly and get the deal done. But it's something that has really stuck with me through the process, to make sure that when somebody approaches me about selling a practice, we want to give them options. We want to give them alternative buyers, so that they don't feel like they're just stuck with that one. And really just kind of fast forward a little bit. 07, we sold. 09, we closed. That they shut it down. We started a new one with a couple of guys that I worked with. Did that for about a year and a half, and then I got into aesthetics. So that first foray into devices. And
well, I mean, let me just say that's one first heck of a background you've got there. We could almost do a BG Insights on that case study you just walked through right there of the family business. I love it, and I think a lot of our listeners will love it, because, hey, let's be honest, we all relate to real world situations versus just something that's academia. So I think that's a great story. And let me just say, I do want to jump into to more of your background on industry, because, as I told our listeners on the front end, your industry specialization is of great relevance for your joining our firm. Let me just ask you on the fun note: Do I understand that you are a coach of a skeet shooting team? You're like the Bill Belichick of skeet shooting. Am I right about that?
The Bill Belichick of high school skeet shooting teams. I am. And again, not to get off on a tangent here, but we had a skeet shooting team when I was in high school. My oldest brother started it. I finished it. A lot of things happened in the years after I graduated, and it wasn't exactly a topic of discussion for those years. But my son started at the same school that I went to, and after 10 years of trying to get it back, we finally got the team back. It's official, and it's a pretty exciting time. Yeah,
no, it is. I can't imagine anything better than getting a bunch of shotguns and high school boys together. I know that takes a little bit of discipline from the coaching front, I would imagine.
It does, but fortunately, skeet shooting is one of the safest sports in high school athletics. So, comparatively speaking,
that's great. That's I love the nichiness of that sport. It fits well with the nichiness of working in investment banking and covering certain verticals. And we should have mentioned on the front end, Drew. Drew's actually based out of Atlanta, Georgia, for Bundy Group. So fortunately, we've got a big airport there for Drew to be able to easily access any part of the country and client opportunities. Drew, let's jump back into that industry specialization. So I teed it up on the front end, healthcare. talk us a little bit about your background. And I'm going to do this a part A, part B question. Just I'll let you answer both. Talk to us a little bit about your operating and executive background in healthcare, and then transition that into how that led to your private equity.
Absolutely. So going back to the family business, we worked with hospitals and we were doing the kitchen equipment inside those hospitals. So I was working with administrators, engineering, not so much on the physician side at that point, but really developing those kitchens in those hospitals. So that was my first foray into healthcare, and that was a major focus for us. Once we sold it, that sort of was not our focus for a few years. And then subsequently after that, I left, and using that experience, I actually got into the device side in dermatology, plastic surgery, and med spas. So that was the laser technology. So fat reduction, tattoo removal, pigmentation removal, using laser devices to treat all that. And then so I did that for 2 years, and the company that I was with went through an acquisition, a restructuring. So I left and ended up at Stryker, and kind of going back to utilizing my hospital experience there. I was working on booms, lights, and integration. So actually developing and laying out the surgical suites for hospitals. So anytime there was a new hospital or a renovation, I was the point person on making sure that everything was laid out properly, all the technology was sold, and really just understanding the actual layout of the room with regard to the surgery, the TVs, the cameras, and everything else. And then subsequently after that, they went through a restructuring also. They went through an acquisition, and I left there. And at the same time, I was getting pulled back in by the laser device company that I was working with previously, and helped them launch a new device that had just come to market. So I did that for another 2 years, and I had that entrepreneurial spirit kick back in. And for a couple of years, I had a focus on trying to build an application in the aesthetic space that could help improve the day-to-day operations for those practices, and try to streamline their before and after photo management, not just in the office, but externally also through their website and social media. So myself and a co-founder started it, and did that for 4 years, and we still have it. I had a partial exit from that, which allowed me to focus on the next stage in my life, Clint.
Yeah, so that way I love it. Again, we're in the story business as bankers, so I love this story. Talk a little bit more about this next phase of that story, which of course is very interesting to me as an investment banker.
Yep. So over that period of time, I made a lot of connections through physicians, owners, and within the space. And obviously, this world is all about connections. Who can connect you to whomever. And I got connected to a gentleman that was starting a MSO that was focused on acquiring dermatology practices.
Management service organization for our
Yep.
listeners.
Thanks for the clarity. And this was focused on buying dermatology practices. And fortunately, having been in this space for quite some time, I had a pretty robust Rolodex of doctors and med spas that I could call on. And so we dove in, and it went from, hey, look, I'm just going to kind of work out here in the field and help you find sellers, to really helping develop the company, develop, not just the culture even, but really understand what we're doing, where we're going, what's driving us, and where we want to be 3, 5, 7 years from now. And it was a very interesting time. So this was about 2021 when we got started with it. And so pre-COVID, started working on it, and the interest from the physicians was pretty good in the dermatology space. And within a very short amount of time, had a very large practice under what's called a LOI, or a letter of interest. We weren't quite at the letter of intent yet, because we still had a lot of work we had to do on our end. But that letter of interest was enough to get us started.
For our listeners, by the way, excuse me, Drew, sometimes we'll call that an indication of interest or a letter of interest.
Right. And so that was enough to get us started and really dive into the practice. And it required a lot of back and forth. The challenging part was, the doctor wanted to sell, but not all the staff members knew about it. So we had to be very careful how we proceeded with him. And he would elect certain staff members to engage with us to get the financial information, to get all the documentation that we needed. But again, that was part of us being very careful, very cautious about getting the word out, because we did not want to have any problems with the staff hearing about it and then having either a revolt or them start looking for new jobs. That was not our intent at all. But fortunately, we got through the process, and as we were going through, we were actually, unlike some of the other ones, we were going a different direction. So we got the doctor under letter of intent while we were still interviewing private equity backers. We had some that we had been in conversations with, but a little bit different than the typical.
Just to clarify, capital backers, those who are going to actually fund the MSO. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that brought its own challenges, but it actually almost made it a little bit easier because we had that initial doctor base, and it was 2 physicians, 2 practices in Atlanta. And that gave us enough of a start to be able to go to the private equity group with that information and say, hey, this is what we got. Are you interested in sponsoring this? And essentially, for lack of better words, giving us the money to complete this acquisition. And through the process, some of the private equity groups are better than others. Some of them were not as good as the others. And we learned a lot about that along the way. But ultimately, we did find someone that we felt was a partner. They came in. We had a meeting with the facility, the doctor's office. Actually, did a full walkthrough, looked at everything, and then the quality of earnings started. So that's a whole nother part that ties into kind of why that initial first round did not go as planned. Primarily because we had made an initial offer under the letter of intent, and it was a great offer. It was a competitive offer using a pretty nice multiple, and the doctor was happy with it. We were happy with it. Private equity got involved, did some quality of earnings, and actually ended up retrading the deal. And when I say retrading the deal, they changed the offer that we had initially made. And we tried to make a case for why we were offering what we were, but they came back and were pretty strong about theirs. And when I say it was significant money, it was a lot of money that was taken off of the offer. And that immediately the doctor and I had a working relationship. I like to think we were friends because we've known each other for so long and our kids go to school together. But, it's one of those things where you get involved and somebody else comes in without your control. There was not much we could do. It was honestly a challenge. And he ended up walking, and, it was tough, but I understood his situation. And that kind of ties into the side of, why you should hire an investment banker primarily. And he did not. And our whole goal of that conversation with him was to get that deal done as fast as possible. We didn't want any outside buyers potentially looking at him. We made that offer, got the letter of intent. And in our mind, the faster we could do that, then the better it was for us. And we're looking at this as, not to say that we're sitting here doing him wrong, because we weren't. He was going to get a very, very nice offer for it.
Well, let me just say, you guys and your side, you're the manager and the lead dog, for lack of a better term, and pulling together the MSO. You're bringing the capital in from the private equity funders. So you're negotiating from your position in good faith with the doctor based off the information at that point. And let's just assume the private equity / capital group was too. But then it sounds like, if I hear you correctly, kind of everything collapsed once the quality of earnings, i.e. a financial audit, was completed on the practice's numbers, and the actual true financial position was known, which then led to the retrade. Am I accurate in kind of that timeline of events?
That's exactly right.
That's a tough position for you to be in. It's a tough position for the doctor to be in. I'm sure the buyer would even have argued, well, hey, that's not what we wanted, but this is what happens when the numbers aren't what we thought they were. So you were getting to your punchline about preparation for doctors and sellers. So I don't want to steal that thunder from you.
It's all good. So, that is what sort of got me in the mindset of, maybe there is a justification for hiring an investment banker at that point. And, while I didn't want any of them to do that, because again, we're private equity backed, building the MSO, we want to buy the practices directly. We didn't,
You don't want to have to compete, right?
I didn't want to compete. I mean, because then, our offer is going to have to go higher. The terms are going to change. It might be more cash up front at close. It might be, some version of that. And, we didn't want to have to go through that. And there was actually another practice too that we were talking with that ended up hiring an investment banker after several back and forth conversations. He just said, "Look, I think my best intent here is to get the best offer. And while I like you guys, I like the autonomy that y'all are offering. I just feel like I need to have somebody on my side." And, the conversations obviously, well, we're going to take care of you, and which we would have. I mean, I wasn't saying anything that, would have burned me in the end, but, he had the foresight to go hire an investment banker, and we were involved in that deal. We actually got to bid on it, got involved, but, it was impressive to say the least what they put together. And
They
that's
being the investment
yeah,
banker.
the investment banker, correct.
Yeah.
They
It
didn't.
doesn't sound like, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys ended up winning the day in terms of best offer after they went through a process with the banker.
Yes, and, we were the highest offer still, but, at the end of the day, this one in particular, the other one that we did not end up getting, they went with a group that was a little bit more tried and true. They had the experience, they had the physicians, and it was a larger group, and he had actually known some of those guys, and I think that's how we got introduced to them initially. But, that one in particular, ended up doing it. I think it was very successful for him.
Yeah.
I think he's
Well,
very happy that he hired a
what what
IP.
what I love about this story, because ultimately, and I can speak for my own career. Every career, and for anybody who's been in it long enough, has got some successes, has got some failures. I don't know if you call this a failure, or maybe Drew, for you, you call it a successful failure for not getting that deal done. But the benefit for us is it led you to us. Not only did it lead you to us, but we already see this with you and working and advising owners, is you get a lot of wisdom now from not just your industry experience in healthcare and aesthetics, but going through the build up of basically building the MSO, which we also refer to as a platform backed by a private equity group. That's a lot of experience that now you can impart that wisdom and experience on our clients who are owners and sellers. Which as you and I know, there's a lot of strategy and tactics that go into selling a business if you want to maximize value and get the best fit. So I'll let you pull at that string a little bit more if you've got anything to add to it.
Yeah, I do. And to add to that specifically, some would call it a failure, some would call it a win. I'm still very good friends with that physician that we were initially working with, talk to him fairly often.
I think
But
that
out of
says a
all
lot
that,
about you, by the way, if that's the case. I think
oh, well,
that
thank
is
you.
the
I
kind of
appreciate
guy
that.
you are.
And the I think of everything as a learning experience, whether it's a failure or a win. You learn everything that you can along the way. What went wrong? Why did it go wrong? When did it go wrong? Could you have changed anything to have made it not happen? And if so, kind of going back in that hindsight 2020. Well, if I had done this, then this might have happened. And that kind of took me through to the next round of MSO startup, and with the next company, again having doctors under letter of intent, moving forward, and the structure of that company, while it started off one way, I sort of the same situation. It was a backed company. The financing did not go through. This was around 2023, so it was just coming off of COVID, and a little bit of a challenge to get this off the ground. But we spent about a year really out there, solid, having physicians interested. One of them under letter of intent, moving forward, and ultimately the financing side of it crumbled the deal. And again, one of the things I learned out of that
Tough
is
year to get financing, by the way.
what's that?
Tough year to get
It
financing.
went, it definitely was. And private equity, they were pulling back the reins a little bit with their investments. But
Yeah.
again, a very strong learning opportunity there for me to understand, we were trying to go in there and buy this practice without them going to market. And by that is what sort of brought me to where I am now. And I'll kind of tie that in here in a minute. But, having gone through this experience and seeing from the side of the physician what they're going through and the challenges that they're going through, and trying to get all the documentation, the finances, the lease for the property, and I mean, a lot of them don't really either have immediate access to that information, or they don't know how to get it. And again, I mean, that's going to be a challenge across all industries, not just healthcare. But that led me to kind of get more involved with Bundy Group, and having had that relationship, and some of the staff members at Bundy I knew very well and I've known for a very long time. And, having that relationship with Bundy really made me start to reconsider, how I can help my physicians even better than what I was doing. And, instead of trying to buy them and take them through this solo process, my intent at that point was to give them an opportunity to take their practice to market, find multiple buyers, not have to worry about, the financing or, retrades, anything like that, and really protecting these sellers through the process so that they don't end up wasting 2, 3, 4 years dealing with somebody that can't finance the deal. And they don't learn that until 2 years later. And that's a
Yeah.
challenge.
100%. Well, it's as I want to, it's part of what you're already telling our clients and potential clients, which is, hey, we've got a team member that's worked on the other side. He, even though Bundy Group's been in this business a long time, and we know a lot of the strategies and tactics of the buyers, we know the importance of preparation for a seller. Now we've got a guy who actually worked on the other side of the fence. He actually was in the other in the room of the investment committees and the buyer committees to talk about approaches with sellers. So I think that is absolutely 100% valuable for all of our listeners as well as our clients to understand. Let me transition this here just really as we start to go into a wrap up though, but I want you to tie in your experience or observations, let's say, on the M&A space with a market well, which is aesthetics and dermatology. I think our listeners would just be interested because you're out there doing a lot of speaking right now on this topic. You're talking to a lot of owners and med spas, cosmetic plastic surgery, cosmetic dermatology. So give us some just kind of thoughts on what you're seeing there in that market today.
Yeah. So, having interactions with a lot of the med spa owners, which was one of the three, legs of my chairs, med spas, dermatologists, and plastic surgeons, that was my primary focus. The med spas in around 2021, from what a lot of them are telling me, is when their phones started to ring off the hook. They're getting emails, unsolicited offers through email, through phone. I mean, heck, they're even tracking them down and sending them texts. And, my conversation with them and my experience helps with those conversations to understand, hey, look, you can take whatever they're going to offer, but you don't really know what your practice is worth until you go out there and actually have somebody take it to market. But around 2021 is where we started to see a strong uptick in med spas acquisitions. And, a lot of these practice owners previous to that, I don't know that they were getting as many calls as they were. And, private equity from my perspective in conversations with them, that's the focus. They're still interested in dermatology. They're still interested in plastic surgery, but all of them are in med spa. They want to acquire them. They want to grow them. Some of them will rebrand them under the group's brand of their own, or let them remain autonomous and have their own, depending on how they are in the market where they're at. But we're seeing a huge uptick in that. Like I said, dermatology is still doing very well. But I think we sort of hit an apex there with dermatology. Not to say that there's not going to be any opportunities coming around. I'm not saying that at all. But it seems like a hyper focus on med spas because it's complementary to dermatology. It's complementary to plastic surgery, and to be able to build a strong portfolio of companies utilizing those three is very appealing to a lot of them. And one more thing to add about that on the med spa side, everybody says, well, what's going to happen 2, 3, 5 years from now? Should I hold off? Should I wait to sell until after the election, or should I wait a year or two? That it's a question that I get all the time. And obviously nobody can answer that. Nobody can, unless you have a crystal ball. But, what we do see, some of the private equity groups, with regard to med spa, at times I'm concerned that they're going to start the de novo practices, which de novo means an actual startup within their own portfolio. So once they reach a critical mass of locations, it might be easier for them to just start a new location. And that's one of the concerns, because, we want to give these med spa owners the opportunity to take their practice to market if that's what they want to do. And so I'm not saying, now's the time and you should rush through it, but it is something that we need to start having that conversation with you now if you plan to exit at some point in the future, so that we can plan properly and get this going, because it's not a quick process.
Yeah, and I agree with all those thoughts and comments. And I'll just say for our listeners, especially those who are in the aesthetics dermatology space, reach out to Drew, reach out to me, reach out to other team members if you want to talk about things you could be doing in advance of a sale to best prepare or build the value of your practice. And then, of course, if as Drew said, you're ready to actually go, as we like to say, test the market and see what kind of value you can get for your practice, certainly we welcome the chance to have that conversation. Well, Drew, this has been a great conversation. It went in a couple more directions than I thought it would, but all for the good. Thanks again for making time today, and we're going to look forward to having you back on BG Insights at some point.
You got it, Clint. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Before we conclude, an essential reminder: Bundy Group Securities, LLC, an affiliated entity of Bundy Group, is a registered broker-dealer and a member of FINRA and SIPC. Please note that Bundy Group and Bundy Group Securities do not provide any financial, legal, economic, accounting, investment, or tax advice through this program. Neither Bundy Group nor its affiliates make any representation or warranty regarding the accuracy of the information provided in this content series, and the content provided does not constitute a recommendation. This content should not be copied or published without the expressed written consent of Bundy Group.